This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Robert, Kathryn, and I are talking about what to do when you think your writing sucks. So we were chatting a bit before we hit record, and I think we all have some anecdotes to launch this this conversation. I've got clients whom I coach who say, "Oh, but this thing on the page isn't matching what I thought it would when I had this idea for the story," or the movie in the mind is this, but the words on the page just aren't conveying it. Kathryn, you were talking about music and piano students.
Yeah. I had mentioned, as a piano teacher, this is one of the things that make adult students quit taking piano a lot of the time, is that the music that they're playing doesn't sound like the music that, like, say, I would play as their teacher, or the recordings that they're listening to. It's that it doesn't match, right? The artistry doesn't match.
Robert?
Yeah, for sure. Even there's a friend of mine who I'm just helping her publish 5 books in a series that she's spent an awful long time working through, and she's been absolutely wonderful at trying to get better and better and better, and she's a good writer, but you can see that the lack of confidence that the first book is any good, and she's gone back and rewritten the first book, and she's thinking, why, I just hope people persevere, because by the time they get to book 5, it's a 5-book young adult series, it's so much better, and you just wish that you'd been that good at the start. And it's when you start talking, Alida, as well, you reminded me of those memes that you see, where the story in my head, and it's this, Van Gogh sort of Starry Night picture, and then how it sounds when I explain to someone else, and it's a series of stick figures and some little, line stars drawn in. It's so hard to get that movie in the head to words that drip with creativity, and of course you want it to come out like that perfectly. So, And then there is, as Stephen King says, and there are also times when you write something, you think, man, I am freaking Shakespeare. And then you come back to and then you come back to it the next day and read it and go, what was I thinking?
Right, yeah. Or there's those gems, and then it doesn't match the rest of the manuscript, right? So you've got like this one paragraph, and you're like, if the rest of it could just sound like this, it would be perfect.
Yes, yeah. But I like how we all started by talking about other people, because none of us ever look at our own writing and think, oh,
never.
Dang. Never.
No, we just talked about this a couple episodes ago, Alida, you and I, about my storyteller narrator and about this short story that I'm writing, and I'm just hoping I can pull it off, right? And I think that's part of it is, I've been writing for a long time, but I still don't know that I'm going to be able to get this to match my vision. But I'm going to keep trying. And then as soon as I'm no longer making forward progress and I start beating my head against a wall and hating myself for doing it, it's either done and ready to share, or it's done and I'm ready to move on to the next thing that can improve my craft, if that makes sense.
Good call.
It makes total sense. And something I've seen multiple times with the Storyworks reading series, and I've only done a handful of episodes so far this year, but writers, I'm producing these stories, the podcast with these stories, and writers have had them sitting for years and years. The episode that is about to come out, the author Robert, not you, Robert. He was saying that he started the story like 6 years ago, and I think it's really helpful to hear other writers talk about their journeys with the story. And on the reading series, these are short stories, not even novels. S.A. Walter, her story, hers was, I think, the second episode in the reading series. She started that, between 5 and 10 years ago. I mean, it was quite a long time ago. And sometimes we just have to let it go, come back, let it go, come back. And so when there's that thing that won't let us throw it away, but we keep saving it, there's something there, and eventually it can match our vision. It might take years, but it can match our vision.
And that's where it's difficult to keep the candle, burning for it, I think, is if it's one project. I reckon that, this is where, as adults, we get a lot of our creativity bashed out of us with expectations. And, little kids, I mean, Kathryn would know this well, having the really young ones around. They don't care, they just, creativity is their world. That is what they live for. And I think if we're starting to feel flat, or our work is starting to feel flat, it's probably because we're not allowing creativity to come in first, by exposing ourselves or being playful, exposing ourselves to other works or to things that make us feel creative. I mean, a couple of days ago, I went down to the city. I went down to visit our daughter, who's finished her first year in uni, and it was quite a stressful couple of days, and to get there. And both my wife and I had stuff going on in our heads. We were full of to-dos and tasks and things like that. And we got down there and we're trying to arrange all our time and schedule things around. And we had gone down specifically to see this exhibition. It was it's called Van Gogh Alive, and it's almost is Van Gogh's entire life, but brought to life in these huge projections and partially animated, and it's got the most beautiful classical music through it, and some quite shocking moments, and some really cleverly put together montages of all his self-portraits, for example. And it's in this huge cavernous warehouse where it's all black, apart from these big screens up around everywhere in all sorts of different sizes and on the floor. It's an extraordinarily immersive experience. And we were in there for maybe an hour, and it completely changed all of us. You just come out and go, all that stuff washed away, irrelevant now. Here's one man's struggle with his own psychosis and his art and his extraordinary growth and his prolific nature and the emotional expression that came through the paintings of friends, and his journey from the south to the north of France, and his origins in Holland. All of that, you just got infused with it in an hour, and I came out just feeling like, oh, thank God, just got away from the busyness of the world. And as adults, we are so immersed mostly in the businesses of the world, but as a kid, none of that matters. Somebody else takes care of all of that. So you can get on with exploration and just messing with things, even if they break, it doesn't matter. There are no consequences, more or less, whereas as an adult, almost everything has a consequence. So I think this entrapment of needing to do a job, or to be perfect, or to get marked, or to be analysed, or to be rewarded, or punished, all of those things get in the way of keeping creativity going. And the only solution for it is to go and pipe it back in again, I think. Go and listen to some great music. Go out dancing. Go for a walk. Go to an immersive art exhibition. Anyway, I've ranted.
Could you use a writing coach to mentor your progress, and a group of like-minded, goal-oriented peers for support and accountability? In 2022, I'll be coaching not one, but 2 small groups of select writers. The first group coaching session is for novelists who want a year-long guided journey from page 1 to the end. The goal? To have a complete draft of a novel at the end of the coaching period while shaping your voice and honing your story craft every step of the way with peer work and accountability. The second group is for nonfiction authors offered in 3-month sessions, whether you're writing blog posts, business email chains, or a self-help or how-to book that will function as your professional calling card. This group will coach you through the nitty-gritty of structure, flow of ideas, honing your voice for your specific audience, and much more, while developing critical peer connections and accountability along the way. The application process will open soon. You can find information about my coaching services at wordessential.com/editing/coach.
I agree. Well, and I was thinking as you were saying that about, I'm going to dive right back into piano again, but I know this is a little more universal than just teaching piano. But a lot of times I'll have my kids who are perfectionists and they want it to sound exactly perfect, right? But they don't necessarily put in the practice time to take a song from beginning to end. Sorry, my dog is messing with my curtain for those of you. Anyway, and I will say to them, okay, you have learned what you need to learn from this piece, move on, because there's so many other things that you can be doing, so many other pieces that we could play that will also hit the same things, right? So in writing, this could be, okay, I have learned from this short story what I needed to learn from this short story. I'm going to move on, because if I write another short story, I'll be able to think something new. Or if I write another story, period, or if I journal another idea, or if I do, anything that keeps you going and keeps your creativity going is useful for ultimately your ability to create art, right? And we do need persistence, and we do need to stick to it. We do need to finish what we started. But to some extent, we have gotten to this point where our book, at least for me, is in my adult life, it becomes a series of tasks and to-dos and things to check off my list. And I think to some extent that is a detriment to focusing on it as an art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And when it is something that we have a vision for, we can put it aside and move on, and we can come back to it. Mm-hmm. And at the end, if we've achieved our vision, it won't matter if it took 2 years or 10 years, because we'll have been busy writing other things and exploring different avenues of our art and craft. And, I think it would be incredible to go do something like that Van Gogh exhibit, Robert, and then plan it so you can sit down and write. So you've got that immersive experience, and you've got all of that input from Van Gogh's artwork and from his biography and from the music and everything sort of swirling through your senses. And then to see what comes out. And we, just did an episode on voice. How would that shift your voice? Would your voice become more musical? Would you be more reflective, thinking about, Van Gogh's struggles? And that's a great way to kind of infuse some passion into what we're doing, and to turn the wheel in a new direction, as we play and explore. And if I look at my writing and I'm thinking this sucks, then I need to break with what I'm doing and come at it differently, come at it from a new mental space.
Yeah, and also to be aware that these are stimulations. We're not trying to compare ourselves. And, I might go and listen to some beautiful piano music, for example, because I want to be really inspired. And, my teacher will say, well, what are you listening to? And if I'm only listening to either, YouTube videos of kids playing pieces badly because I just want to know what the notes are, then that's not going to thrill my creativity. And in fact, it's going to teach me the wrong thing. But also you've got to be careful that, if you're reading masterworks to get inspired, not to get dispirited and say, I'm never going to be able to write like that. Well, No, you won't, because that was how they wrote. You'll write how you write. So my art won't be like Van Gogh at all, ever. And the point is not to emulate it. The point is to be inspired and stimulated and recognize that every human being has something in them that can be turned into passion, I believe. Anyway.
Right. Oh, agreed. And, it's also so important to read widely and to read different genres. One of my clients told me recently he'd always read mysteries and thrillers. And now that he started reading more widely, he's discovering how many different styles of writing there are and how many different voices and how many different forms of narrative you can bring to a story. And so it's like he was trying to do this one thing the way the writers he loves have been doing it. And it wasn't, he needed to open up and play and explore and find out who he is. And that he might want to write a mystery, but he needs to do that his way with his voice. And so, taking in different stimulus, whether it's paintings or music or literature, is so helpful to shifting us out of the mode that's producing the thing we think sucks and into a new mode,
I think what you say there is really important for a lot of people to hear, because in the indie author community, there's a very, very, very strong opinion about understanding your genre and what your genre expectations are, to the degree where new authors will be advised, read everything that's in the top 100, understand what marks they're hitting, understand what the reader expectations are. And none of that is wrong, but it can stifle your creativity if you think that you have to write the same way as somebody else. Because your voice is going to be your voice, as we spoke about before, and you can deliberately influence that. And I think what Alida's saying there is fabulous, because now we're talking about the craft of delivery, not the business of marketing the story. And they are really different things. And yes, okay, there'll be some expectations around the style of writing, perhaps within a genre. But, you can have a wide range of voice in mystery thriller. You can have, the choppiest noir, and then you can have the most lyrical literature. And they're perfectly fine. But there will be expectations about what the story is supposed to contain if it's a mystery or a thriller. So I do think it's really important that you understand the genre you're writing in, but you expose yourself to these, masters of creativity, because it will act as fuel.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And don't limit yourself to the greatest of the greats, because the more you read and the more you write and the more you learn, the better you'll become at picking apart what you see, at analyzing it. You might be reading something and it prickles you as a reader, right? But now as a working writer, you can say, okay, I'm going to pause here and think about this. What just didn't flow for me? What's not sitting right? Oh, I don't believe this action this character just took. The motivation for it isn't here. It's not jiving with what I know about this character or something. And that's a huge moment in our development as writers, when we start to identify things that work and things that don't work for us as readers. And if you only read the best of the best, you might not encounter that, or you might encounter it but feel like you aren't worthy of making that analysis. Like, oh, well, who am I to say, Joe Greatest did something wrong?
That's well said, actually. I think that to avoid comparisonitis and being completely dispirited, then the depth can come from reading popcorn type stuff through to works that have endured the ages. So for sure I think we would all three of us would agree that probably read almost everything we could get our hands on, and at times there were things that didn't interest us terribly, and maybe we made our way all the way through it. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we read a couple of books in the series and then gave up, or maybe it was something that completely fueled us, and we just then read everything from that author. But we've explored lots of avenues, and I would encourage that.
Right. And I would look for quality fiction. We can open a preview online. We don't even have to leave our house anymore and go to the library or the bookstore to open a cover.
Flip through, yeah.
But, don't read the bottom tier of fiction so that you can deconstruct it, because then you won't be inspired and you won't learn artistry. But don't just read the top tier, whatever you esteem to be the greats, because then there's the opposite effect. So read widely across genres and throughout quality levels. Read things where you do enjoy the story and you can be inspired, but that also help you to, examine what it is to be a writer, what it is to tell a story.
Get juiced up.
Yeah.
Yes. Get juiced up. I didn't hear that right initially. I was like,
I know, right? I was like, what?
Get used up.
Okay, got it.
Get used up. I was like, get used up.
Sorry. The Aussie accent running everything together.
Oh, it was our American ears hearing it differently.
Both.
Yes,
what I
there
really
you go.
meant was get juiced up.
Thank you for listening to the StoryWorks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.